back.
This isn't the first time that we've had to make choices about the kind of country that we want to be. Future makers or future takers. But it might be the most important time.
This is what the future of Earth looks like.
On Triple J.
You know, you've probably thought at least a little bit about what your life's going to look like in the future. Like when you're the age of your parents or even your grandparents, what do you imagine? Like maybe it revolves around a relationship or family or having a nice house. Do you ever think about work? What you'll be doing in 40 years' time for work? Because the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, released a big report today, Intergenerational Report, and it predicts Australia 4 decades from now. Most of the stuff in there, not too surprising. We're going to be living longer. There'll be a lot more old people. That'll be you by that time. And there are other predictions in there about tax, about government debt and that kind of stuff. Obviously, climate, it's going to be a lot hotter. They're the predictions. So what will all this mean for you? Well, Dr. Ben Hamer is a futurist from Swinburne University of Technology and he's with us now. Hey, Ben, thanks for coming on Hack.
Thank you for having me.
Can you quickly tell us what a futurist is? Like, people hear that and are probably pretty intrigued.
Yeah, I'm still trying to explain it to my parents. So it sounds like a bit of a made-up job title, but essentially a futurist is someone who looks 10 years plus into the future. So within organisations, sometimes we look at what happened historically and just kind of project that forwards and maybe over a couple of years. This is looking at what are the trends that we're seeing around the world today and then pushing that into the future. So not being informed by what's happened in the past and this is the way we've always done it, but the trends we're seeing today, throwing it forwards and working our way backwards to see how do we either get there or, like with the Intergenerational Report, what's some stuff we actually want to avoid.
It's fascinating stuff and crazy to think that you're always living in the future effectively, thinking about what's to come. We've got this Intergenerational Report, as I mentioned. There's a lot in there talking about productivity, ageing population, climate. What do you think the main takeaway is for young people?
Yeah, so for younger people, I think there's a few things. I mean, you said it in your intro that when we're talking about people who are age 65 plus and that cohort's going to have doubled in 40 years' time, that's people who are listening to the show, right? So they're in scope. When we look at what that means in ageing population, it means that there's less people of working age to actually pay tax to fund the required levels of aged care and hospitals and defence, etc. So, you know, as working Australians, we're going to feel it in our hip pocket because the government's going to have to figure out how they're going to actually pay for all this stuff without going more and more in debt. And then in terms of the jobs of the future and from a perspective of work and education, you know, I read something that said the other day that in Australia we have fewer and fewer people actually graduating high school, and yet over the next 5 to 10 years, over 90% of the jobs, new jobs that emerge will need people to have not only high school, like finishing high school, but need post-school qualifications as well, because they're going to be things like blockchain data privacy analysts or people building metaverse platforms. And so we need more people with higher skills. And the Intergenerational Report also said we need double the amount of people going into university as well. So we've seen the government focus a lot on VET and TAFE skills and qualifications and free placements in the last few years. I think we'll start to see more around university as well.
Yeah, and I think we're already kind of hearing that, especially from government ministers in terms of the Universities Accord coming out later this year. We know they're hammering home that more people are going to need to be skilled for the future. And with technology, I guess it's taking over a lot of the unskilled roles that have traditionally existed. What does that mean about the kinds of jobs that will be left for us to do? I mean, you mentioned some of the jobs there that don't even exist now.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I think that there's a bit of the robots coming to take our jobs kind of stuff that's resurfaced. So I read something the other day where some company was predicting that in 4 years' time in Australia, 10% of roles will no longer exist because of tech. And to me, that's just absolutely blown out of proportion. The vast majority of jobs will still exist. They'll just look really different. So if you think about when ATMs were implemented and you know, automatic teller machines, we thought that was the end of bankers. But bankers still exist. There's more of them. They just don't dispense cash now. They do other types of work as well. So you'll see most jobs just evolve, still be around, but evolve. But then you're also seeing like the Daily Oz. I don't know if you know them, the guys who do the Instagram news stuff.
Of course.
They have a chief of TikTok who's 19 years old. Yeah. So we'll see that stuff happen. And then you've got wacky stuff like in Japan where you can get paid $80 an hour to be a smiling instructor because with wearing masks in COVID, some people have forgotten how to smile.
I don't mind that job, actually. I'm pretty ready for it. I mean, a lot of your work, Ben, does revolve around work and looking at how that will change in the years ahead. For a 20-year-old listening now, what can they expect work life to look like when they're 60? For instance, we know we're going to be living longer. Do we think that we'll be working longer as well?
Yeah, we'll be working longer, not necessarily in terms of the amount of hours in a week. And you're also seeing things like the 4-day work week, which by the time 20-year-olds are 60, that's most likely to be something that will be everyday life. But people will be working longer. We're seeing the eligibility age to get the pension continually getting bumped up. We saw people, because of cost of living during COVID, actually come out of retirement and re-enter the workforce. So we'll be working, I'm 34, I'll be working into my 80s because financially I'll need to, but also because work is less manual, more cognitive. It's more sort of thinking stuff. So you can. You've also got technologies like exoskeleton suits. So think about what Iron Man wears, an exoskeleton suit. Now that's being used in warehouses with tradies so that they can actually lift a hell of a lot more heavy stuff, but also do it in a safe way. And not only does that help with the immediate risk, but also it means that people can work doing manual labour into their 60s, 70s and 80s because they're not actually having the wear and tear on their body. So we will be working longer. We'll be using technology a hell of a lot more. We'll probably be working in a different pattern to what we work now. And I mean, even the effects of climate change you mentioned, that's going to disrupt the working week, particularly if you have a role that's outdoors. More than likely in 40 years' time, you'll be wanting to try and avoid extreme heat in the middle of the day. So a lot of tradies will probably be operating overnight rather than the standard 7 till 3 that they do now.
You're listening to Hack. I'm Dave Marchese. I'm speaking with futurist Dr. Ben Hamer from Swinburne University of Technology just about the future of work, what we can expect in the decades ahead. And it's fascinating, the kind of work that Ben and other futurists do, predicting what the world will look like, what Australia will look like. I don't know, Ben, the report basically has said Australia's going to be poorer, hotter, less productive. There's a lot of pessimism in there. Well, I guess it's easy to be pessimistic, and I think young Australians are used to that. Whenever we're thinking about the future, it's generally not with a whole lot of optimism when we're thinking about the world around us. As a futurist, is there any positive stuff that you can see in there for young people that we should be looking forward to?
Yeah, I think, if we even look at the Intergenerational Report in and of itself, one of the things that, yes, there's a lot of negativity in it, but it's actually really positive that we're identifying this stuff now because we've got a 40-year lead time to avoid a lot of it. But then there's also a lot of stuff that you don't see on the front page of the news, but actually is really bloody inspiring. So for me, technologies like in India, they deployed facial recognition glasses with their police force, and the police force was able to identify 4,000 missing children in 3 days.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff that I love. You've got Waverley Labs that have these earbuds that are like AirPods you put in your ear, and it does instant language translation. So you could be talking to me in a different language, Italian, and then I could be listening to it in real time in English. So language barriers are removed in our lifetimes. Also things like X-ray, which is the brand, X-ray glasses or Google XR glasses, where for deaf people we could be having a conversation, and for hearing impaired, it comes up with subtitles on the glasses as we're talking so I can engage in meaningful conversation. So there's some really powerful stuff. And even personally for me, I've got a dad who's got Parkinson's disease. AI can now predict Parkinson's 15 years before the onset of symptoms when human clinicians can't. I have a sister-in-law that has breast cancer, and we see that AI can detect hard-to-detect breast cancers much more effectively and also reduces the rates of false positives by over 25%. So they're just a handful of things that come to mind when I go, as much as there's a lot of pessimism and cynicism around all of this, there's some really inspiring stuff that says we're in the pretty good hands when it comes to what our future could look like. And we also have a level of control now around the steps we can take to avoid some of those not so fun futures.
Well, that is a good note to leave it on, I'd have to say, because we do hear a lot of bad news all the time. So it's nice to hear about all the positive things we can look forward to, what technology can bring us. I don't know, Ben, you can come back in 40 years if you like, and we can revisit what you've just said just to make sure it's accurate, if you've earned your salary and you did predict the right thing. But thank you so much for coming on, for breaking all that down. Ben Hamer from Swinburne University of Technology. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dave.
Hack.